we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not. Hi there, and welcome to Better Than Not, the podcast that aims to capture shifting perspectives and thought-provoking ideas in conversation while asking the question, is anything what it seems? Based on my series, A Changing Frame of Reference, which you can read on the Substack app, and I hope you will, as it might give you some insight into what the podcast is all about. I also hope you'll subscribe to my YouTube channel, Better Than Not, so I can continue to bring you great guests like we have today. I'm your host, Doug Gardam, and today it's a pleasure to welcome back to the podcast, Barry Keane. Barry, how are you?
I am well, Doug, and thanks so much for having me back.
As I said before, I've been waiting for this conversation for a while because I kind of feel like, man, we barely got started in the first conversation. But for those that are listening, Barry is the drummer for the Lightfoot Band. He is the 48-year drummer for the late Gordon Lightfoot. And that is what part of the band, it's the members of Lightfoot Band that play live around different places, I'll say in North America.
Mm-hmm.
Barry was at an episode, I'm going to say probably 4 to 6 months ago. And I want to say it's episode 102, but I'm not totally certain about that. But Barry really epitomizes a lot of the themes of this podcast. Things like nothing is what it seems, or shifting perspectives, or just a changing frame of reference. As Barry will tell you as we go through this today, he was born into the music business. He was scouted by the major leagues in baseball and then ended up playing literally music. He was part of so many stories. He knew and talked a little bit about an iconic Canadian band and how it got its name, which he was present for. He'll also will talk a little bit about an iconic Canadian song that what I've found is there's not too many people that don't know it. And he talked about in the last episode how that song really wasn't supposed to happen at all. That turned out to be, just like I said, it's an iconic, and I'm going to leave it to let people think about that for a minute, Barry. But welcome back.
Well, thank you, Doug. Again, it's great to be back with you, and appreciate you asking.
So since we last talked, you told me a few things, but I think you've been recording. You've had a couple of things come out. Can you describe a little bit of what that's been about? You kind of hinted at it when we talked before.
Well, there was a brand new Anne Murray album came out that I played on. It was the #1 country album in Canada a couple of weeks ago. I haven't checked recently, but it was taken from tracks that had been recorded back in the 70s and 80s.
Wow.
And it was made up of tracks that didn't make the cut for the albums that they were recorded for. So they're brand new 50-year-old tracks. And they sound great. Anne is great. Anne did some work on it out in Nova Scotia.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, she's very proud of it. And that's great. And also been working with a wonderful blues guitarist named Danny Marks. And Danny has a brand new single out called One Way Ticket Home. And yes, I played the drums on that.
Barry, do you just get called up for this type of work? Like, did they just call you, or is it through my people will talk to your people, or you're so connected in this business?
I don't have any people, Doug. It's the phone rings, I answer most of the time, and yeah. And what can I say? It's and when you're in charge of yourself, you can pick and choose what you want to do. And I've been very lucky that I've had a lot of things to pick and choose from over the years.
No, for sure. I was going to say, well, you've got another event coming up because we were trying to book this around that. And this is, again, Um, dare I say, you've got a charity event coming up, so I don't want to steal the words from you.
Well, yes, and it's an event I look forward to every year. This will be maybe my fifth or sixth time joining
Oh, man.
a great gentleman named Andy Kim, who does an annual charity Christmas show every year. The first couple were down on the exhibition grounds. The last two or three have been at Massey Hall, which is a venue I'm a little familiar with. And
Yes.
it's a great event. It's for a great cause. And Andy has a great band, but he asks a couple of guest musicians to join him every year. I get to go in and shake
Oh,
shakers and hit a tambourine and just have fun. No pressure at all. I don't play the drums. I just go in and shake and bang. And the other guest is a fella named Alex Lifeson from Rush,
oh my
who
goodness.
comes in and plays a lot of the lead guitar stuff. And Alex has been part of Andy's event since the beginning, and
Wow.
it's been going for I'm going to lose track, but it's at least 20 years. So it is a wonderful event. I just spoke to Andy yesterday. Andy called on the phone, and it's funny. There's a little bit of kismet happening. I was waiting to do an interview on a Cincinnati radio station, and I was listening before my spot came on. And right after I hung the phone up from Andy Kim, "Rock Me Gently" came on the
Oh
Cincinnati
my goodness.
radio station. So Andy and I have been kind of connected. I mean, we go back over 50 years. Um,
Oh.
do you have time for an Andy Kim
Oh
story?
no, we got to, because I was gonna say, I was gonna prompt you on this a little bit.
Oh, okay.
You
All right.
you you did kind of talk a little bit about it, so I don't want to steal from your story, but I also want to make sure people listening, Andy Kim wrote the iconic "Rock Gently." Like,
Yes.
everyone knows that song, and it's like, did you know it was written by a Canadian?
Yeah.
And
I mean,
secondly, there's
yeah.
another that came out, I think, in the 70s. He wrote so many songs, Barry, right? Like, I think from that side, but another huge one in the States that came out with the Archies was Sugar Sugar.
I mean, how big a record, how big a song could you have written? And of course, we play it every year at charities, at
Oh man.
Andy's charity event, of course. And I get to play, the shaker part in Sugar Sugar, which, it's so gratifying. It's so much fun to be part of something like that. I mean, it's a record everybody has heard for how many
Oh,
years, and there is actually a shaker part in it, which I get to play. So that part is fantastic.
well, as a fan growing up, that was one of the very first songs that I remember taking a liking to, partly because of the comics, right? And
Sure.
the TV show, but like how big a song that was. And it fit in the same time. You're going to laugh at this, but the Beatles, A Hard Day's Night. Those are two songs that like are one of are the first that I remember as I was like maybe 6, like very young, but Sugar Sugar was huge. So I want to introduce Candy Kim and a little bit like this, because this is like really a Canadian icon too, right?
Oh,
And
for sure.
you have some crazy stories about this. So I want to hear that.
Well, the craziest one. I mean, we kind of lost track of each other for a few years in between, but go back to 1970.
Mm.
I was working promotion for Quality Records, and Andy was on a label that was distributed by Quality Records. So Andy came to town. My job was to drive him around to radio stations.
What a
He was
job.
he was in town. He was nominated as Male Vocalist of the Year at the Gold Leaf Awards. They weren't even the Juno Awards back
Oh,
in 1970, the Gold Leaf Awards. And the Gold Leaf Awards took place at a hotel in downtown Toronto. So Andy came and did the tour of radio stations that I drove him around to. But then it was getting to be time to take Andy to the award show. And he knew that there were no dressing rooms at the hotel. It was just an award presentation. So Andy asked me, he said, "Is there anywhere I can go to change my clothes for the event?" Well, we were up in the northern part of Toronto, near where my parents lived. And I said, "We can go to my parents' place." And he said, "Yeah, that'd be great." So Andy Kim changed changed his clothes for the Gold Leaf Awards. And by the way, he went on to win Male Vocalist of the Year. He changed his clothes in my parents' bedroom, which, and we're talking 55 years ago, Doug. So
It's crazy.
Andy and I have been connected for a long time.
Well, he went on to write a lot of songs, like, and it was just, but I was gonna say that Rock Me Gently, like the song almost comes out of your mouth when you say the title.
Yeah, it was a huge hit. It was a song written by Andy, and it was a huge hit. And you mentioned he had so many other hits. Some were big hits in the States, some were big hits in Canada. "Baby, I Love You" and "So Good
Yes.
Together," and there were so many of them, so many of the great ones. And I get to play percussion behind Andy's great band once a year at these events. And it's for someone who was such a fan of pop music as a kid
Oh,
and throughout the years, it's a thrill to take part in something, to be able to be part of performing the songs that you listen to on your transistor radio as a kid.
it is it. It's got to be a bit surreal, isn't it?
Oh, for sure. It is. It's again, we touched on this in the first episode. What am I doing here? It's, it's again, I liken it to being in a fantasy camp.
Oh
It
yeah,
it's like people would pay big money to be able to do a lot of the things that I get paid to do.
it's
So
crazy.
it is absolutely surreal, Doug.
No, it's one of those things that you kind of like. I often wonder, like even in the light, we're playing with Gordon Lightfoot, and you'd be like driving in a car, and you hear a song that you played on. Can you remember the first time that happened?
Wow. It might have been, yeah, I want to say it was a song called "Carry Me" by the Stampeders.
Oh,
And I at least clapped my hands along with some others. I worked with a great fella named Mel Shaw, who produced the Stampeder records. Mel and I both worked at Quality Records back in the late 60s.
oh man.
So I want to say this might have been 1968. Mel needed some people to come in and clap their hands to carry me. And I think I may have even shaken a tambourine at the time. So that was enough of a thrill for me to hear me hand clap on a song that was being played on Chum Radio in Toronto.
Chum
But
Radio.
then years later, I produced a record called "You're Gonna Miss Me, Girl" by a group called Wishbone. And I
Yes.
was the drummer, I was the producer, and that got to be like a top 10, top 15 record in Canada. So I got to hear that quite a bit, and that was 1971.
Wow. That's because Wishbone, I remember that band too. Like it's,
Yeah,
and you mentioned the Stampeders, and it's like it just these things just go through my mind. I was a big like you were baseball. I was a big hockey player. Like I love playing hockey. I was a goalie, and I can remember going to the old Markham Arena on 48 and 7,
I know it well.
and the Waxers would play, and I would get fortunate to get playing. Like I think Palmetier was playing at that point in time, believe it or not. And at the warm up, which was as a young player, you love watching how good they are in the warm ups, right? Like because they just can do things that like are impossible. And they would always play the Stampeders' "Sweet City Woman."
course.
And that would get you so pumped up. Like,
Well, and working at Quality Records, of course, and working with Mel Shaw, I got to know the Stampeders pretty well. In fact, my wife at the time and I used to go curling with the Stampeders on weekends.
oh,
Yeah,
wow.
no, it was, Kim and Rich and Ronnie and Mel and um, you get to know people
Oh,
when you
yeah.
work with them, and great people, and they're still around. They're still working.
I was going to say, because we see them every once in a while advertised out here.
Yeah.
And it's like, and it's weird because as you go through the different stages with electric guitars, you mentioned Alex Life's, right? And they take, with Rush, took music to a whole nother place as far as I'm concerned. Big fan. But then you go back to the Stampeders and they played banjo on
Mhm.
Sweet City Woman. Like, who would have
Rich,
put that into a pop music song?
that was Rich Dodson. Rich he was a musical genius. Now I say was, but probably Rich still is around
Yeah.
and is still doing genius things. But no, that was Rich's idea, and Rich played the banjo, and boy, what an iconic part that was.
Did it ever work though? Like, it was like, to me it was kind of a, not at the time, but in like retrospect looking at it, it was like you kind of see the trio up there playing in the banjo and you're going, yeah, it does have a banjo in.
Well, that was Mel Shaw. Mel was a very, very smart producer and
Oh,
kind of a promoter of the band. He came to Toronto from Calgary with the
okay.
Stampeders. He had worked with them out there, and I remember seeing the big Stampeder band. They had horns and stuff,
Oh
and
man.
I remember seeing them at a venue called the Broom and Stone in Scarborough, and it was quite a show. The big Stampeder band.
I can only imagine. I'm going back to this charity event you're doing with Andy Kim though for a minute, because in the last discussion you had your number of appearances at Massey Hall.
Hmm.
And that's what's happened. That's where this charity event takes place, correct? Is that where they're playing again this year?
Correct.
And as I understand from someone else, they've done some refurbishing of the Massey Hall.
Well, they did, and Gordon Lightfoot closed Massey Hall
Ah,
for the refurbishing, and then the first act to play after the refurbishing was Gordon Lightfoot. So
no
we
way.
we closed it and we opened it, and man, oh man, we went in the day before it reopened to do a sound check. And I was expecting, because they put millions of dollars into this. What I
Oh,
saw was hundreds of hard hats, and the hard hats were holding various various tools. The venue wasn't anywhere close to being ready. There were electric saws, there were hammers, people were working like crazy. We couldn't even get to the stage the day before the reopening concert.
oh
We
man.
couldn't get to our dressing room, and I thought, if I was a betting man, I said to a couple of people, I said, "There's no way we're doing a show tomorrow. There's no way the show's gonna happen." But those workers, man, they did a job and they got it good enough for us to play. I think we played three shows for the reopening of Massey Hall, and
Oh wow.
I think up until even a year ago, they were still working on Massey Hall, getting it properly ready.
Amazing.
But I've done those last two, three, four Andy Kim shows there, and it's a beautiful venue.
So what will this take you to the number of events you've done at Massey Hall?
Well, because somebody asked me. It started with people saying, "Well, Gordon Lightfoot, because Gord got the award for playing Massey Hall the most number of times,"
Oh
and they
really?
proved it. Yes, and yeah, the mayor was there at Massey Hall for one of our shows, presenting the award to Gordon Lightfoot for having played Massey Hall the most number of times. And they quoted a number. And I thought, That's not right. He's played there more than that. So I went back and did a little research, and I was right. He had played more times than they had given him credit for.
Oh wow.
And I went back and did some research on Rick Haynes, the Gord's longtime bass player. And Rick Haynes had played there the second most times because the number of times Rick actually played there was higher than the number they had credited Gordon.
Wow.
And so that brought me to me. And I thought, I started adding up the number of times because Rick had been with Gordon longer than I had. But I did the research and I've sort of kept track. And this year will be my 165th appearance at Massey
Wow.
Hall.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible to me. Like,
People would give their eye teeth to play there once, to play Massey Hall one time. And yeah, 165 times.
well, you hear that from certain artists that like Massey Hall is that place to play, right? I think I recently heard either Rick Emmett from Triumph or maybe it was somebody from the Tragically Hip saying like it's like it's so like the sanctuary for like Canadians to play. Like it's coming back to Massey Hall. Does it feel like that for you?
Yes, no question. And an awful lot of that aura is because of Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh,
It was because Gordon played there so many times. It was called the Rites of Spring for a long time. Gord went in there.
yes.
I remember playing, it was every spring for a long time in March. And we would go in and play 6 or 7 shows consecutively. And then one year we actually did 11 shows in 10 days.
Oh man.
What a run that was. But
Well,
that whole, yeah,
wasn't Gordon like kind of the first, like your band, like the first to kind of do that, like pick a venue and then have the people come to you rather than being the traveling band? Like, wasn't this one of the first times that, like, Billy Joel has done that at Madison Square Garden too, right?
sure.
And I know Vegas is kind of taking that to another extreme, but like Gordon Lightfoot and you guys were like the first to do that, weren't you?
I'm not sure we can be credited with being the first, and Gordon did it a number of times before I did. So
Okay.
I'm not sure that that can be credited there, but certainly one of the first to have an almost residence like there are in
Yeah,
Vegas.
residence is the word I'm looking for.
There you go. See, I told you I was good for something.
So when you know how you're saying about Massey Hall and you go in there and like, there's no way we're going to be playing here tomorrow night. You must have been witness to that many times over your time of coming into different places to play because you played like virtually all over the world, right?
Well, a number of countries. There were, Gordon actually had so many offers to play in Japan and China and Australia, and Gord actually didn't like to travel that much.
Oh,
He No, his favorite shows, even though he was very um, apprehensive about playing the hometown, it always made him uptight. He loved playing Massey Hall. He loved
yeah.
being here. He Traveling was okay with Gord, even though he loved trains and planes and automobiles and ships, and even though he was fascinated by them, the travel wasn't the carrot. That he loved to play his songs for people,
Mm.
but the travel part, I remember there was a great offer to go to Japan and do a TV special and play a number of venues there. And Gord said something like, "Why would we go there when we can play Cleveland?" So it wasn't at the top of Gord's popularity, something to do to travel all parts of the world. But we did go to Germany and Switzerland. We played the Montreux Jazz Festival in
Oh, you did.
yeah, in one year with Leonard Cohen was there that year. We played all over the UK, Scotland, and Ireland, and England, and but mostly North America. Gord loved playing in North America.
Well, it's funny since our first episode, and I've chatted with different people, and everyone knows you guys. It's kind of like I've been kind of amazed because I've always liked the songs, your catalog, but I didn't intend like to say like, of course we know like Gordon Lightfoot, of course we know the band, and it was like, wow, that's very cool. Tell me, do you miss that road, playing on the road and being in front of the audience all the time? Like, I know you're still doing it,
Mhm.
but you probably can pick and choose a little bit more of what you do.
Well, we can, and Gordon Gordon was not only the great performer, the great singer songwriter. He was also pretty much the boss of the operation, and he would pick and choose where we booking agents would present tours to Gordon, and Gordon would either say, "Yeah, we'll do it," or "No, we're not doing that." So, uh, and do I miss that? We touched on this a little bit in the first episode, but there were two worlds. Gordon
Mm,
talked about the two worlds, which was the world of being home, the world of being a father, the world of being a husband, of taking the garbage out, of paying the bills. And then there was the other world of touring. And that became a way of life for a week or 2 weeks or a month. Occasionally we'd be away for a month. And it became a way of
mm.
life. You would lose track of what day of the week is this? What city are we? Uh, uh, there's an old joke about what city are we in. One time I was standing waiting to go into a restaurant. I was for lunch, and we were in Indianapolis,
Okay.
Indiana. And as you know, I'm a big baseball fan. So
Yes.
standing there waiting in line, I looked over and there was a gentleman leaning against the wall waiting for the elevator. He had shades on, there was a backpack. This was Tony La Russa, the Hall of Fame manager
Yes.
of the Cards and the A's and the White Sox. I'm looking over saying, my God, that man is a dead ringer for Tony La Russa, but it's the summer. Why would he be in Indianapolis? There's no reason. He was with the Cardinals at that time, and the Cards didn't have a minor league team in Indianapolis. I'm running through all of this. And while I was waiting and convincing myself that couldn't have been Tony La Russa, I went in and picked up the local paper, the Cincinnati News. And I went, wait a minute, we're not in Indianapolis, we're in Cincinnati. And of course that's Tony La Russa. And I went over and caught him before he caught the elevator. We had a great chat. Nice fella. He knew Gordon Lightfoot's music, and
Oh, wow.
we had a great chat. But there I was. I was completely convinced I was in Indianapolis when it was actually Cincinnati.
That's funny. I was gonna say that probably happened many times, just because like so many years over the years, like you had like so many years you'd be on the road, kind of thing.
Well, and the tours. We didn't do the residence in Las Vegas. We did almost exclusively one-nighters.
Yeah.
And toward the end, we were doing 5 shows in 5 different cities in 5 days. Travel day, 5 more cities, 5 shows in 5 more different cities in 5 days. So it was 10 cities in 11 days. And
Oh man.
again, it was like, what day of the week is this? Okay, we're in Pittsburgh, but we're going to Cleveland. Okay, no matter who you are, and were the shows special? Of course they were special, but you're human, and it's
Yes.
kind of like things. Our schedule, we had routines, what we did every single day, and to be honest, after a while, it was like, where are we going tomorrow? Where are we right now? So no, that stuff, and nobody in the band did drugs either. Like we were all pretty straight guys and trying to keep everything straight. But no, it happened for sure.
Well, I was going to say that's probably what was responsible for your longevity. Because I think when you mentioned the drugs stuff, I think that really hits really hard when you're on the road, right? For a long time.
Well, it does, and I have to give an awful lot of credit to the great big acts, especially the rock bands who go out there and they just play their butts off, and they're out there, doing these stadium shows and these arena shows, and they just knock themselves out for a couple of hours. Well, then they have to go to sleep,
Oh,
and then they have to wake up and go do it again. They have to go travel and do it again. So when people knock musicians for doing drugs,
yeah.
like after a while, you have to sleep. So you need some help going to sleep because the adrenaline is coursing through your veins, right?
Yeah.
And they say it takes 6 hours for your body to recover from a physical workout. And being in a rock band, like imagine Mick Jagger.
Oh,
Imagine the show that man puts on at his age. And now Mick has to go to sleep after that. Well, 6 hours after maybe 11 o'clock at night, his body hasn't recovered till 5 in the morning,
that's
really.
crazy.
And then you have to get up and maybe get on an airplane and go to the next city and then get yourself up for the next show. So that being in a rock band, especially the headliner, huge bands that are playing stadiums and arenas, like I give them all the credit in the world, man. That's a tough lifestyle.
It's really hard to actually even comprehend because when you go to see them, right, you're excited. It's a big event, right? And they're putting that on. And it's really hard to understand is, well, that's in Toronto or that's in Vancouver. But another night or two from here, they're going to do it in Seattle. And they have to do the same thing for the audience, right? Because it's like the audience who's attending, like going to like a Gordon Lightfoot, like you seeing you guys on a band, that would be like an event in a person's life, right? And listening to those songs you've heard on the radio, and you're completely unaware that, or you don't even think about it, right? Like they're going to do the same thing tomorrow night in another place, miles from where you are.
And
Like,
well, I was going to say, it might be our 13th show in a 2 week period, but what you just mentioned, it's the only show
yep,
that somebody in Seattle is seeing. They've been waiting for years to see Gordon Lightfoot.
yep,
And Gord was so great. Gord, we rehearsed every single day before every show we did, even if we were in a place for more than one day. Gordon demanded that he demanded of himself that every show was as good as the one before or the one after. He was very well aware of people that this was the one show that they would be seeing. It wasn't their 13th show in 2 weeks. It was the only
yep.
show, and Gordon always treated them that way.
That has to be hard on a person, you would think, after time, right? Like that you've got to be at that level at that moment, and you're doing it so many times. I think it's a great point, Barry, because I think it gives you an understanding for what, like, not only have they there's the craft of music and putting it together, like in the band and getting your sound right and all the things that are associated with that, but then there's the personal human part of it, right? That, like,
Well, yeah, there is. And we would rehearse. Gordon had us rehearse for an hour and a half or 2 hours every single day after
really,
travel. Yes. And so you'd be playing Sundown for the 13th, for the 26th time in a 2 week period. But Gord wanted to change the set list, and he wanted to hear what song A sounded like before sundown, and then what song B would sound like after sundown. And he wanted to hear how the flow
mm,
of the show went. And so we would have to play those songs. And after a while, it became there were times where it was a job, where it was oh my God, are we really going to play all the songs again in the afternoon before we play them at night? But that was the perfectionist in Gord. And
Mm.
because he cared so much about the fans, he wanted that show to be just as good as every other show.
Well, you also have a lot of audience members that are paying enormous attention to, like you said, Sundown or Wreck or like it's just like so many, and like I don't remember going to a show and hearing a song wrong. Do you know what I mean? Like at that level, it's just it's amazing that it's like that. And it's like if you play a wrong chord in the middle of Wreck of the Emmett Fitzgerald, you're gonna have an audience that notices that, right?
Well, I had one episode, one situation. We were playing Massey Hall. It might have been the eighth Massey Hall show in 8 days. I was playing alone. And at the end of the wreck, I would do a big retard ending where I hammered on the toms, slowing down toward the end of the song where it would be bloom, bloom, smash. And then Gord kept singing. And I thought, what is going I had ended the song too soon. And when you're smashing away on toms, it's not subtle. It isn't subtle. So I spent I spent the rest of that set trying to figure out what went wrong. Did I really do it wrong? Anyway, I checked with Rick Haynes afterward, and he said no. Gord sang a wrong verse, and so he added the verse at the end. But but I was so used to playing the song the way the song went that
Right.
I hated it. But this was at Massey Hall. And there's no laying in the weeds at Massey Hall especially when you're playing drums behind Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh my
Anything
goodness.
you do is going to be so apparent,
Oh
and
yeah.
especially if you do a retard ending before the song is over. So that was one time where that actually did happen.
Wow. Well, I'm gonna go back to Tony La Rosa story
Yeah.
in Indianapolis, Cincinnati, because I'm while I was watching this, I'm thinking about you actually, and this is the Jays wrap up this year, like coming to the World Series, and I could only think in fact, I was gonna text you or send you an email, but was that exciting for you, being the baseball fan you are?
Oh, hugely exciting. It was the style of baseball that the Toronto Blue Jays played was reminiscent of old school baseball. It wasn't just get up there and either strike out or hit a home run. The They started calling the bottom of the Blue Jays order the Glue Jays, and that was Ernie Clement and
Yes.
IKF and those guys who were doing so much. Miles Straw, that they contributed so much, but it was so much of you get on, I'll get you over, he'll get you in. That was that style of baseball, which I love. I love that. I'm not a fan of the ultimate outcomes. You either walk or strike out or hit a home run.
Mm.
That to me is so. The Jays were, I mean, not only the home team doing as well as they did, they were overachieving.
Oh.
If you compared their lineup to the Yankees or the Mariners, they didn't match up
No.
individually, but as a team, this was a great example of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts.
Oh
So
yeah.
I love the style of baseball. I love the fact that they did so well, and it was so disheartening when that home run went out. Yeah, the Dodger Rojas, I think, hit the home run to tie it, and then they lost. So no, I loved it. Way to go, Blue Jays.
No, to me it was like you don't see this often to me in sport today, but the consistency through the whole team, as you mentioned, like any one of them were kind of playing at the high end of their abilities to me. and how it all came together was kind of like almost freaky. Like I
Well,
think,
and they were an easy team to root for because they seemed like a team.
oh
It
yeah.
wasn't a bunch of individual businessmen going to work and "Hey, you're supposed to hit a home run. All right, you hit a home run. Yeah, big deal." Like they rooted for each other, and you could see them hugging each other. After somebody put down a sacrifice bunt or hit a sacrifice fly, or
Oh,
it wasn't it wasn't about. And Vlad Guerrero Jr. proved to everybody what an outstanding all around ball player he is. He's
mm,
not just a slugger, he's a much underrated, highly underrated first baseman. And he was as much, you could see him clapping
oh
when
yeah.
he would hit an RBI single to the opposite field. It wasn't a 3-run homer. He was contributing as a ball player. And that team was very easy to root for.
It's like they brought humanity back to sport in a way.
I agree. No, it was like old school to me, old school sports, old school baseball. So it would have been justice for me if they'd added another World Series title. But
Well, to me, it was like one of those things that was just so close in so many things, and like it's like you would hear commentators saying, "Well, this is this and this and this," and yeah, and I said, "But what about all the other things that went right?" Like it was
oh,
enormous. Like you've got a couple of pitchers that are playing like kind of way past their expectation level, and Yasevich, for example, like it was crazy watching him. And Barry, I am not like I like baseball, but I don't watch it very often. But I could not watch this. It was just crazy to see this young guy, like everybody goes up and he strikes them out. He's not even supposed to really be there, right?
no. And then you go from one day to, and then you go from your Savage, who is playing, maybe pitching his sixth or seventh game ever in the major leagues, and then the next day it's Max Scherzer pitching. So you had this combination of players and rooting for each other, and way to go, kid, way to go, vet, way to go, all that stuff. And I had a bit of a personal connection to the team because
Oh,
I played on OK Blue Jays, which is the seventh inning stretch song. And
ah,
we did that way back in the beginning, and
no
it
way.
yeah, it hung around all these years. So that was kind of a personal connection for me. I was one of the Bat Boys, was the name of the group that recorded that.
Oh wow, that's a very cool thing. I like that. I could win a Trivia Pursuit game on knowing that knowledge now.
Keith Hampshire sung it. Keith had had some hits back in the 70s, and just a great guy.
So that would go back to the beginning of the Jays, would it not?
Yes, yeah. And it
Wow.
was the two guys, Tony Kosnick and Jack Lenz, who wrote it and produced it. They were jingle writers. They got hired by the Blue Jays to come up with this song. And they asked Paul Beeston, the president of the
Right.
team. They said, and Tony and Jack are not baseball fans, so they didn't know what to write. And they said, "Tell us about the team, Mr. Beeston." And he said, "Well, right now we're just okay." And that's where the title of the song came from, OK Blue Jays. Yeah.
Oh, that's a cool story. No idea. They're okay. Okay, Blue Jays. Because that's like iconic for a Torontonian. Like it immediately comes back just in your head, right? Like you can remember it. Like I'll say the big time was the Joe Carter, right? With
Yes.
and that's such a big event in Toronto history, for example, for sure.
Talk them all, Joe.
True enough. Did you get to a game?
I got to one playoff game, and
Okay.
I think it was the 92 run. I remember I was sitting out beside the left field, over beside left field, and Ricky Henderson was playing left field for the Jays. And that was exciting for me to be that close to
Oh yeah.
Ricky Henderson. So that was a memory. And also, Um, we played with Gordon Lightfoot. We did a show with Blue Rodeo and Simon and Garfunkel down at Sky Dome. It was called Sky Dome back then.
Right.
And it was in 93. It was a couple weeks after the series. We had the Phillies locker room, the Phillies clubhouse, and they still had information up there like batting time, batting order, and that kind of stuff from the Phillies. So that was pretty cool to
Oh yeah.
be dressing in the same place the Phillies had dressed. Yeah.
Well, I mean, baseball was a pretty big part of your life early on, was it not?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
So were you already working at Quality Records and still playing baseball?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, okay.
No question. And I even the story about me being scouted by the Yankees is a
Yes.
little overblown. But what happened was my best friend back in the day, I think we were 10, 11, 12 years old, was Brad Park, the Hall of Fame
The hockey player?
He was my best friend at the
No
time.
way. Oh
And
wow.
Brad's father, Bob Park, was our coach. He coached the rep team. We played on the rep team. And Brad and I were the two pitchers. Brad was the shortstop and pitched. I was the second baseman and pitched. And Mr. Park was bound and determined that Brad was going to be a professional athlete. So they play football, baseball, hockey, everything he could. And he was very encouraging of Brad. But we were playing a game, pretty sure it was against Claire Lee. We had a double header. And Mr. Park had gotten a Yankee scout. I can't remember his name, but he was a Yankee scout from the area, from northeastern Canada. And he got him to come out to have a look at Brad. Brad pitched the first game. I pitched the second game. I pitched a one-hitter. And so the scout talked to my parents about me. And yeah, so that's kind of, you can call it being scouted by the Yankees. But fast forward a few years, I was working at RCA, and there was a tryout camp. The Cincinnati Reds had a tryout camp down at Leaside Park.
Oh,
and I thought, I'm gonna go see what happens. So I went down to Leaside, and I was putting my cleats on, and one of the scouts came over to me and said, "So, tell me about you." I said, "Okay." He said, "Do you have a job?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Is it a good job?" I said, "Yes." He said, "Don't even put your cleats on, because the chances of you making the Cincinnati Reds are pretty slim." They hadn't even seen me play, but he was being nice. Like, you're just wasting your time here, kid.
He'd seen too many stories.
I guess so. So I went to a Cincinnati Reds tryout camp, but didn't even try out. So that's kind of the extent of my Major League Baseball connection.
But you played a lot of baseball, right?
World champion slow pitch player back in. Yeah, I played in 3 world championships, and I have a bronze medal, a silver medal, and a gold medal. And we were the first Canadian slow pitch team to win a world championship back in 2007 in St. George, Utah.
That's really cool.
Oh, it was very cool.
Did you always play second base?
No, it was funny because touring with Gordon Lightfoot took me away from. It was hard to play on a regular team, so there were a lot of tournaments where I couldn't go, and because it was an amateur, it's amateur. You're not a professional. You're not making money out of it. So guys would be away for certain tournaments. I would be away for certain tournaments. So it would be like, okay, we're playing in Syracuse next weekend. Okay, and you're playing shortstop. Okay, Tommy's not here. Fred's not here. You're playing left field. Okay, Joey's not here this weekend. You're playing third base. So I got to play all over the place. I was almost always the leadoff hitter because I could get on base. Yeah, I had not a power hitter at all, but I had a way of getting on base. So I was almost always the leadoff hitter. And I played a lot of positions, but my favorite positions were up the middle. So it was either shortstop, second base, or center field, if I had a choice.
Where the action is.
Yeah, yeah. Loved it.
No, that's kind of cool because we didn't talk really about your baseball at all, and but I couldn't help thinking about you during the series, and because the Jays really weren't supposed to even be there, right? Like,
Oh, I know a friend of my son bet on the Blue Jays in spring training
oh wow,
to win the World Series. And
oh,
I think the odds were 250 to 1
oh yeah,
that he got. And he came this close to $150,000 if the Jays had won the World Series.
oh my
He
goodness,
came within that home run of cashing in, but it was something like 250 to 1. So no, they were picked to finish last in the AL East and
yeah.
all that stuff. So they overachieved quite a bit.
Do you pay a lot of attention? Well, you're in this fantasy league, right? Like you do all the because when I was talking to Peter, you do all the picks, right?
Yes, Peter Cardinelli and I have been Peter Cardinelli, the one of the greatest bass
Oh
players,
yes,
rangers in this country. We've been fantasy partners for I don't know 30, 40 years. We've had fantasy teams together and we just won our fourth championship in the last 6 years this last year. So
you
Peter,
did.
we're very proud of that. Yeah.
So you know your stuff in baseball.
Well, I like to think so. It's
Do you scorekeep, Barry?
No, I did that a long time ago, but, and I think I mentioned this briefly, I am a real baseball fan. And one of the advantages to touring was that you would be in so many different cities. And I would try to figure out not only the major league teams where we might have a travel day going in where we could go to a game, but the minor league games. And so I was in Erie, Pennsylvania, and we had a sound check. And between sound check and crew meal, there was a ballpark across the way, and it was the Double A affiliate of the Detroit Tigers, the Erie Seawolves. So I walked over, and I was pretty good at yakking my way in. And I spoke to a guard. I said, "Hey, I'm playing over here. Can I come in and see an inning or two?" And the guy said, "Yeah, oh, you're with Gordon Lightfoot." I said, "Yeah." He said, "You should meet our play-by-play guy. He's a
Oh
Lightfoot."
wow!
So anyway, he got me to go up to the booth. I went up to the booth, a fellow named Greg Gagne, who is now the radio play-by-play man for the Detroit Tigers. But so I met Greg and we talked over the years. I got him Lightfoot tickets for him and his relatives, friends, when we would be in different cities. He got me minor league tickets. So I went to see in San Antonio, Texas, Portland,
Oh,
Maine, Trenton, New Jersey. Was able to go see double and triple A games thanks to Greg. So we were in Akron, Ohio with Gordon Lightfoot. And I saw that the Erie Seawolves were in Akron, Ohio on the night that we had a night off. So I got in touch with Greg and said, cough up some tickets for me and the crew. Will come over and see the game. He said, "Yeah, great." And then he emailed me back and said, "How'd you like to do the game with me?" And I said,
no.
"Yeah." So I said, "Yeah, sure." So I got to be the color analyst for a double A professional baseball game on the radio when I was in Akron, Ohio. It was the Akron Rubber Ducks versus the Erie Seawolves. And a lot of the kids that were playing in that game are in the majors now.
Well, I
So,
was gonna say that was one of the things that must have been kind of cool for you is seeing all these minor league games and then seeing them come in and break in the big leagues.
I saw Rafael Devers. I saw Jordan Alvarez. The game I called had Bo Naylor in it, Kerry Carpenter. Um, oh gosh, there were 4 or 5 of the kids that the game that I called who are now in the
Wow.
major leagues. Yeah, very
So
cool.
your this fantasy life of yours isn't just music. Like you just find yourself in the right place a lot.
Well, I like to think I know something about baseball, and Peter's a big baseball fan, so
Oh,
we
okay.
we know our stuff. We've earned our titles, and it's a tough league. It's a bunch of guys that know baseball, and that there are no soft touches in our league. So when you
No.
win, you've done something right.
Well, I mean, for someone to even ask you just off the cuff to come and do the color commentating for a game, that's going to be like it's not like 10 people are listening, right? Like they have a big audience, and like you must have had some conversation with them for him to know your background in baseball.
He knew that I knew some baseball,
Oh my
but
goodness.
okay, I had an hour after he said, "Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Yes, I will." I had to look up 50 baseball players, and I had only heard of 2 of them.
Oh
So I
man.
had to do a lot of research to even sound like I had any idea what I was talking about. But it was a blast to be able to
Oh,
do
I
that.
well, for a fan like you are, like that would just be amazing to get a chance to do that. Did you get to any of the games of this Blue Jay series run, World Series run?
No, no. And to be honest, I would rather sit at home. I
Oh,
would rather. I kind of like. I coached baseball for about 25 years, so the analysis of the strategy of the game and what's happening, and each pitch means something and each play means something. I would rather sit at home and see the replay. I would rather sit at home and hear the analysis and that kind of thing. I love the analysis of baseball.
so being a real baseball guy, I was talking to someone like a couple of weeks ago, and they were saying that with the electronics that are here, like the all the digital stuff, that the box that we see over the plate that they pitch into, I had made the comment that I'm surprised the umpires don't have that screen in their mask so they
Hmm.
can see it.
Hmm.
And they said, well, they're going further than that. In 2027, they're not going to have umpires anymore. Is that true?
They're still going to have umpires, but
Okay, okay.
the job of the home plate umpire, a lot of his job is being taken away.
Really?
Yes, because it's going to be, I think they're going to go to automatic balls and strikes, and they are going to have the rectangle, the box, and that is going to call balls and strikes. I hope not, but I hear that. And for catchers whose job is to frame pitches, like
Yes.
you take a pitch that's outside of that box and you move it back in, so the umpire calls it a strike. Well, that art is going to disappear, because if it wasn't a strike, it wasn't a strike, no matter how
Right.
you, no matter what you do, and that is a real art. Those
Yes.
guys have grown up learning how to frame pitches, how you catch a pitch, like teaching a catcher to not catch a pitch like this, but you catch it like this, because to the umpire it
Yes.
looks like it's more in the strike zone. Just all the intricacies of baseball.
Well,
Some of that I think is going to go away.
I was so surprised because they were comparing this to tennis, and they said most of the tennis is all electronic, and I was kind of going, okay, I didn't know that, but I was to your point. Um, it's like there's so many subtleties that as I'll say a spectator, you don't really get to see, right? And you don't necessarily even understand. So I was kind of surprised that it's neat for the people watching, you can see where the strike is. but I was kind of surprised that they were going to actually take that away. So you're saying it's not a decision yet.
No, and they're
Okay.
still talking about it. I do think next year they're going to have a challenge system where a batter or a pitcher or anybody can challenge. The umpire says strike, you can go, I'm challenging that. And they're going to go back and I guess look at the electronic box and say, well,
Okay.
you're right, it wasn't a strike, it's a ball. You're going to have so many challenges per game, which for us old school baseball guys, come on, man, really, the umpires are there for a reason.
Well, what I'm always amazed by is how accurate they are.
Oh, they're amazing. Can you
Like,
to call 100-mile-an-hour pitch that's moving, and you're supposed to determine that at a certain point it actually crossed the plate at a certain height? Come on, man. I've umpired even at the lower levels of umpiring. It is a hard
oh,
job, and you only have one angle. It was interesting for me. I sat down and had lunch with a hockey referee.
oh yeah. Okay.
And you're refereeing a minor game, you only have one angle. And like you're supposed to determine if somebody was offside. Well, at the moment that somebody might have been offside, another player skates right in front of you and takes away your vantage point completely.
Yep.
And if you look at these replays, you can see, okay, he was out. He was out on the next replay. On the third replay, oh no, he was safe. The same play. The
Yeah.
vantage point is so important. And I go back to old school again. The guy has one vantage point. He said you were out, you're out. Next, move on.
I think you've like got a really good point there because it like we're not going to have robots playing the game,
No,
or
no,
I shouldn't even suggest that, right? But it's like,
not next year anyway, Doug.
but I mean, it's one of those things, and to me, making those calls is as much a part of that game as the actual playing the game, right? So when you start taking some of that away, that kind of messes that up. But to your point, I mean, they're already being able to dispute the calls like on the bases, right? And they go back and take the video,
Which
which
also makes me crazy. But
I see. I didn't know they were even doing that. So, like I said, it was kind of surprising to see that that was kind of. And I said, like in the World Series, there's no way they're going to call him safe, and you're not the home team. Like it's like that's not going to happen. I don't think anyway. But it was interesting seeing how these things kind of merge together. And the other thing that I thought was neat is what it would be like to stand in the batter's box as a kind of just a regular person and to see what speed that ball goes by at. Like, I think that would be astounding.
it is, from my experience, I know that it's one thing to see a pitcher pitch to you on television. It's
Right.
another thing to stand behind the plate. You can have
Oh,
front row seats and you could see a pitch come in. You say, I could hit that. Go stand in the batter's box. It is so night and day different.
oh,
You, I remember scouting pitchers. I played fast pitch softball for many years. And I remember somebody said, oh, there's a new guy coming in the league. And so you go over and check him out. You stand behind the screen and go, this guy's not much. I can hit him. And then you stand in against him and go, holy smokes. It's night and day different for a person who's never played baseball to stand in the
oh,
batter's box to see even 90 miles an hour with any kind of movement on it. You have no chance of
oh
even
no.
making
To
contact.
me, I just think it's, and the TV really makes it, kind of gives you a false sense of what's really happening, right? Like it's like I there was the one throw I think it was going from Clement to Guerrero on first,
Mhm.
and it was like how far that distance is if you're there. Like,
Oh, no, if you're deep in the hole, it can be 40 yards.
oh,
That throw is like 40 yards. Go stand 40 yards away from something and move, and then try to throw it hard on target.
to be even close, yes.
These guys are unbelievable. They are
Well,
unbelievable.
the other one that I was memorable was the throw from I think it was right field by to get the guy out at home.
Barger.
Barger, yeah.
Yeah,
That to me was that that was a whole nother dimensional level of playing.
it's crazy good. It is just crazy good. They're the best at what they do in the world for a reason. Yeah.
Well, you think that a human being can get to that point? That's the part to me that was so astounding. Like, and he got him out. Like that's the other thing. Like Kirk's in the right place to get the ball and catch it, put like all that stuff. It's just like we just it's just a baseball game. But then you think these guys have spent their whole lives learning how to do this, and they're already gifted, right?
They are, and they're the best in the world at what they do. No
Well,
question.
World Series, World Series.
Uh,
So I want to go back to a couple things because it's the music part of this that I think is so fascinating, and you've like just how you sit in and did commentating for a baseball game. Your whole music world has kind of been like this, and we started with Andy Kim's and just the whole sense of some of the music that came from Andy that's still part of our world, and you think like I could mention almost like so many Canadian artists from. So I'll go back to kind of how we started the last episode. And you talked about the Guess Who. And you were there when in fact I'm actually going to get you to tell the story over again cuz I just it's a mind-blowing story cuz it's like here you are. Were you 15?
yeah, 15.
and well tell the story because I could listen to this story 3 or 4 more times.
Uh, well, my father ran a record company in Canada called Quality Records, which he developed into the largest record distributor in the
Unbelievable.
country. He was a pioneer. Anyway, summers to me were baseball and girls. So at the age of 15, he said, "No, you're going to go to work. You're going to come to
Oh,
work in the factory." And I said, "What? Like what? You're taking away from my baseball and my girls? Come on." So anyway, I went to work in the factory, but I was 15 my first year and too young to drive. So I would go into work with my father. He would go in early. He
yeah.
was the vice president general manager. I went in with my father. So early in the morning, I was sitting in his office before I went to work in the warehouse. His right hand man, a fellow named George Struth, and my father's first name is George. They became known as the Georges in the Canadian record business. George Struth came, knocked on the door, and said, "George," to my father, "I want to talk to you. I have an idea. And Barry, I'm glad you're here too." I had no idea why he was glad I was there. But anyway, so George Struth said, uh, "We're going to put out a record. There's a record by Chad Allen and the Expressions, a band out of Winnipeg. But I don't think anybody's going to pay attention to Chad Allen and the Expressions." Now, this was at the height of the British invasion. So Mr. Struth said, "If we can trick the radio stations into thinking this record is one of the British invasion bands, we'll have a lot better chance of them playing it." And so Mr. Struth pointed to me and said, "Barry, I want you to hear the tape." So he played the tape and said, "That sounds like the Beatles, doesn't it?" I said, "Well, kind of, Mr. Struth." I was really into the British invasion. So he
Right.
said, "But it sounds like one of those British invasion bands, doesn't it?" I said, "Yeah, it really does." And he said, "Okay, George," to my father, "I want to press the record. I want to have put it on white plain labels. And I want to try to trick the radio stations into thinking it's a British invasion band. So he, along with the secretary that my father and Mr. Truth shared, Jesse Glavis, they took felt pens, they got the record pressed up, and they printed Guess Who with a question mark on the white labels. And they sent them out to the radio stations. A week later, Mr. Struth came in to my father and said, George, I have good news and bad news. The good news is they're playing the record, shaken all over, but they think the name of the band is the Guess Who. And that's where the Guess Who got their name.
And you were there.
I was there as a 15-year-old kid. Yes, sir.
So part of what I think is neat about this story, because you told this on the first episode, and I was blown away. I'm still blown away by this story, because this is like nothing is what it seems, right? It's just not like that. So I'm talking with a friend of mine, Craig, and I think I've mentioned this to you.
Yes.
So he's kind of a music aficionado. He ran a backline rental company for music for years. My band in high school, he was the guitarist on it, and like we just had a lot of fun. So I'm telling him about talking to you about this Guess Who, and he goes, "You're not going to believe this." And I said, "What?" He says, "I have the original contract for the Guess Who, signed by Barry's dad." And then he held it up for, and Barry, he didn't know that we were talking about this at all. Like, and he literally, like, he went away for like 5 seconds and he pulled it out. Like, it was so bizarre that these things kind of, and that was within a day of our conversation. And it's just like, how is that possible? And then I thought, well, I'm talking to Barry, and he has a lot of these stories.
I do have a few, Doug. Yes, I do have a few.
It's just a crazy. Do you remember? So, because we went through how you kind of got involved with Gordon Lightfoot asking you to join the band and come and tour. The accidental part of it, you even coming back to drumming because you were working as a record producer, I think, at that time. Do you remember your first time going on stage, like with Gordon, to play? Like, okay, you've been asked, and you're pretty young, and Gordon's probably already known, and he's asked you personally to do this, right? Like this wasn't like we said earlier on, have my people talk to your people. That none of this goes on. These are personal discussions. Do you remember the first time that you went out?
How could I ever forget, Doug?
No doubt.
I had played on the Old Dan's Records album with Gordon back in 1972, and then played on the Summertime Dream album with Gordon in 1975. So and on the Summertime Dream album, there were a few more drum-oriented kind of things. Gordon never wanted to have a drummer. So having a drummer was kind of a necessary evil. He wasn't sure if he was going to like it. I had never toured with anybody. I didn't know if I was going to like it. So the band flew with an engineer, a sound engineer from Toronto out to Lake Tahoe, Nevada. Gordon was booked to do 14 shows in 7 days at one of these big deal casino showrooms in Nevada. Okay. We get on stage, and I had said to Gord, I said, what songs are you going to play? Because I wasn't a Lightfoot fan. I didn't own any Lightfoot albums. I didn't know Gord's songs.
Oh, really?
I knew If You Could Read My Mind. I knew Go Go Round. I knew Spin Spin. I knew the songs from Old Dan's Records and from Summertime Dream. Otherwise, nothing. So, and Gord said, don't worry about it, man. Just skull it. I thought, okay, which was a little odd from a perfectionist like Gordon. Anyway, I get on stage, this huge stage in this big big deal showroom in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. And there's an orchestra set up behind us. And Gordon had flown in a fellow named Nick DeCaro, who had done arrangements for Randy Newman and Gordon and just I think Christopher Cross, an awful lot of big name. He was a big deal arranger from LA. He had played piano on the Old Dance Records album, so I knew Nick. Great guy, just a great guy. But Nick was conducting the orchestra behind me, okay? And this, keep in mind, this was in the drinking days. Gord was, so number one, Gord was under the influence. Gord was not happy. Gord didn't like being out of his comfort zone. And playing with an orchestra, playing with a drummer, playing in Nevada in a big deal showroom, all of these things, none of these things were in Gord's comfort zone. So he was terribly uptight. He was under the influence. He was angry. He wasn't sure why he was doing this. It was kind of making him mad that he agreed to do this, right? So, Gord, I think I mentioned to you last time, Gord never gave a set list.
Yeah, no, this is the part I still am amazed by.
So I show up with a set of drums. I'm sitting in the middle of the stage, and Gord starts strumming and starts playing a song. I didn't know what it was. He's playing and singing, and Nick DeCaro comes up behind me and taps me on the shoulder and said, "What song is this?" I said, "Nick, I don't know," because he had to get the charts ready for the orchestra, right? Anyway, Gord's singing and playing along. We finally figure out what song it is, and the moment that Nick and the orchestra had figured out what song it was, I probably still didn't even know, but they figured what song it was. You could hear in the background the music stands, everybody scurrying to get up. Let's say it was Carefree Highway. So they're all scurrying to find Carefree Highway. They all get it up. As soon as they start playing, Gord stops. And Gord changes songs and plays another song. Nick comes to me, "What song is this?"
Oh, wow.
Nick, I don't know. Anyway, I got through it because Rick Haynes, the bass player, would come over to me and say, "Sticks, brushes, lay out." He would tell me at least what I should be playing. But Gord was so out of his comfort zone. He got the engineer that he had flown out from Toronto to go home. He was fired.
Oh,
Nick
wow.
and the orchestra were fired. They were told to get lost. And I thought, okay, it's just a matter of time before, the drummer, because I'm a big part of his not being in a comfort zone, right?
Right.
Somehow I made the cut. Somehow I ended up playing that first show with Gordon Lightfoot. Wow. Gordon Lightfoot with drums. Peter Goddard was there from the Toronto Star to review what a concert would be like. Gordon Lightfoot adding drums. It was a little bit like Bob Dylan going electric.
Oh, yeah.
Lightfoot adding drums was a big
yeah.
So I sat in the middle of that stage, and there would have been 2, 3, 4 songs where I didn't play. And this is a big stage in front of a lot of people, and I would just sit there for minutes on end. Rick would say, "Lay out." Okay. "Lay out." Okay. I played what I could. We played the Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. I remembered, yay, I know something. Anyway, the next day, the review, Peter Goddard, I called home, and the review in the Star was very positive, how the drums added to Gord's sound and all of that kind of stuff. So it was, yes, to answer your question, do I remember my first gig with the Gordon Lightfoot? Very well. Very well.
So when you heard that review, you must have felt pretty good. Like that must have made you feel spectacular, right? Like especially when you compare it to Dylan going electric, like Lightfoot adding drums. Like Oh, and you've already seen all this carnage already disappear behind you.
No question. If it had been a bad review, I probably would have been on the next plane back to
Oh,
Toronto. But thank goodness
unbelievable to me.
Peter Goddard was kind and seemed to like it, and so yeah.
Did when you were playing a lot with the Life of Band, so the popularity probably grew after Summertime Dream too, right? Because the wreck of Edmund Fitzgerald was just such a giant, um, I'll say, song for so many. And I'm not going to get you to repeat that story, but because I like maybe people go back and listen to the first episode. I love the story still because it's still such a cool thing. But I was wondering, were there other songs that you would have had a chance or been asked, or any of the members, you mentioned Rick here, that Gordon would come and ask, like, what should we do here? Or did you ever have like that part of that? Because you mentioned in the last time we talked about missing that creative part of Gord now that he's gone. Did he? Did you get brought into some of that stuff when he's creating the things, or like stories that like things that you can remember that like you were brought? Because I remember you telling me about how he's going to nod, and that's when you're going to do the drum fill for the wreck of the Emma Fitzgerald, and he hadn't nodded for a long time, and you thought he'd forgotten. And I was just wondering, were there other times that you can remember that you were brought into some of that creative part of a song? And
Well,
what was
not
that like?
not directly. In the early days, Gord left the drum parts up to me.
Ah,
And
okay.
if Gord didn't like something, then he would mention that and maybe have a suggestion for what he wanted changed. And that relationship evolved over the years. And there were times toward the end where Gord actually wrote drum parts, or he would write chord charts for me and leave the drumming up to me. And again,
Okay.
if he liked it, he wouldn't say a word. If he didn't like it, he would say, come in earlier, come in later, uh, play on the snare drum. We need it to be more like this. So there were, and there were parts because Gordon was a drummer way back in his early
Really?
days. Oh yeah, Gord played the drums. In fact, he played with Jack Zaz's big band in Toronto. And one of the
Oh,
ways
wow.
Gordon got started was he asked Jack, because Gordon had written some songs, and he asked Jack, "Can I play a couple of my songs while we take a break?" But no, Gord was a drummer, so he knew his stuff. And occasionally, Gord would have a part that he had in mind for a certain song, and he would tap it out for me, and he
Mm.
might write a skeleton kind of a part for me on the chord chart. But for the most part, he left the drumming stuff to me.
So the drums that we hear on the majority of Lightfoot music are your creations, actually.
Well, with Gordon's editing. See,
Yes, but he's not. It's not written down what you're going to
right.
play or kind of directed. He's actually brought you in to be the drums.
He
Period.
did, and
Oh, that's cool.
some of the ones you hear, like a lot of times, I'm a big believer in space. So a
Mm.
lot of times I would wait for a verse or two maybe before coming in, with dynamics kind of thing. And Gord would say, "No, play off the top." So we would disagree on some of that stuff. So some of the stuff you hear, where it's drums top to bottom, wasn't necessarily my idea. That was probably Gord saying, "No, play right off the top," or play snare drum right off the top, where I might be more inclined to make it dynamically,
Mm.
that kind of a thing. And Gord was a lot more, "Nope, hit snare right off the top, right off the hop. Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4." So some of the stuff, yes, was my creation. Some of it was my creation with Gord's editing.
Interesting. Well, you had commented previously when you said is that being a record producer
Mm-hmm.
helped you a lot in your drumming because you kind of being able to fit all the pieces together to help you to play and bringing that to an extent. With that in mind, you've played for a lot of as a when I say a guest drummer for a lot of artists. Are there any that particularly surprised you when you when they asked you to like Barry, I'd like you to play on this track, or I'd like to play on it. Was there any artists that like you were kind of surprised that that took place?
All of them. I, I, I just, I had quit playing the drums, Doug. I wasn't a drummer anymore. I was a record executive. And then it was an accident that we talked about that got me
Right, right.
playing again. So I never read music. In the beginning, I didn't read music. And I had no idea about playing a jingle or a movie score or a television score. I had no idea about any of that stuff. And I never wanted to be Buddy Rich
It's
or
so crazy.
Keane Krupa.
Yeah.
All I ever wanted to do, and still, is fit in. All I want
Yes.
to do is hear what I think. If I can play something that I think makes a song better, I'll play it. If I don't, then I won't. And there's a lot of times where my best drumming is not playing at all. It's just leaving it to the really good musicians to play where I don't get in their way. That's that's kind of my attitude toward playing the drums. And no, I was always surprised. I was especially surprised when people, when producers and arrangers hired me to play on jingles or movie scores or something. I was like, I have no idea what I'm doing. Yeah, yeah, but we like your sound. We like the way you play it. And then they would guide me through it. It was, my sound was different. My playing was
Mm,
different than the other guys. There were a
right.
lot of guys doing studio work and fabulous drummers, but they were more big band jazz oriented. I
Mm.
was more playing what I heard on pop radio. I made my drums sound like what I heard on top 40 radio. I played the
Interesting.
parts. So, but no, it still is kind of a surprise when I get a phone call from somebody.
Well, it's like you're describing your secret sauce as what to leave out. You've got a super command of knowing what to leave out when you're playing through your years, right? And I think that's like you said, trying to fit in. And in trying to fit in, that's a great way of connecting that is what to leave out. Like I was just going through, I was talking to someone who is talking about talking in front of an audience, like in speaking. And he says one of the most important parts that you can do for that is figuring out what to leave out. So when you say that, it's like that's what makes you the popular drummer that you are, is that you figured that out. And it's like, and you probably can't even if I know how crafts work, it's probably really difficult to actually articulate it. You just do it.
You just do it, and you hope that your decisions, that whoever you're working for, that they like your decisions, and they don't always. They will
Mm.
say, "Oh man, we need this part to be bigger, or we need this part to be smaller, or we." That happens, when you work with people. Of course, you work with people, but it's the really challenging ones were the Canadian record dates, because you would be, for the most part, have to go in and record final recordings for 4 songs in the 3 hour session. So you go in having never heard any of the songs. And sometimes you would have a chart, sometimes you wouldn't, but you had to come out of there basically spending 45 minutes on each song. You'd have you'd have the artist play it for you, or you'd go over the chart that you had. It's very difficult to come out with a finished product in 40 or 45 minutes for a song that you've never heard before. That was a real challenge, and it was exciting.
So you're, because I take that back to how you described the record, the Edmund Fitzgerald being recorded. And you said kind of a similar thing. You never heard the song before, never been played by the band before, and you played it in one cut, and that's what we hear. Um, that's kind of your signature when you describe it that way. You have the ability to do that, and like, would you say some of your best work is done in that kind of intense environment? You're able to control the intensity, obviously, because you're able to perform, but you walk in not knowing what you're going to do, and you've got 45 minutes.
Well, there's that, and then you have a minute and a half left in your hour jingle session, and you're sitting there with a 40-piece band. And if this isn't the take, it's overtime for a 40-piece band.
Ooh.
So the pressure is that, okay, ready? 1, 2, you have to play it perfectly, or you just cost the client thousands of dollars. So you talk about pressure. That's pressure. And especially when you've just, like, I made a deal with a copyist, one of the main copyists in town. And a copyist is the one that takes an arranger's work and makes it so the musicians can read it. They
Okay.
write out the parts. For arranger will, give it to the copyist. The copyist makes the lead guitar part, the drum part, the bass part. So I made a deal with the copyist and said, could I please get my part first, so I could get a head start on trying to figure out what I was supposed to play before the other guys, before Guido and Mo and Russ Little and, Don Thompson, and because they would just read it. I didn't read.
Mm-hmm.
So I just knew enough to get myself in trouble. And there was and that worked great. Give me 60 extra seconds from the time it took for the copyist to give the other parts out to the rest of the band. In that time, I could kind of at least figure out a way to fake it. So there was one morning, it was a different copyist. We were at Manta Sound, and it was 35 or 40-piece band. It was a Chevy commercial, and the copyist started handing out the parts, and I could see I was going to get mine last. And the arranger said, all right, let's go. Ready? 1, 2. And I said, hang on. I don't have my part yet. It hadn't even landed on my music stand yet.
Oh, man.
And my God, it hit my music stand. And all I could think was, I have no idea how to play this.
This is the ultimate nightmare.
And this is a Chevy commercial, right? With horns and strings and all kinds of. So I faked my way through the first pass, and I kept looking at the parts, and I changed some of the parts because I didn't know how to play some of the parts. It ended up okay, but that feeling of I don't even have my part that I probably won't be able to read yet, and the conductor's
He's going.
Oh my God, your heart rate is, and you don't want to look that stupid in front of the best musicians in the country. You just don't. So anyway,
Wow.
Experiences. They say experience is what you get when you get what you didn't want, right? So that was an example of an experience I got.
And your accumulation of that experience over the years with so many different exposures. Because I was going to ask you, is there another, so like the wreck, is there another I'll say song creation story that you were part of? And like, because we when we talked on the phone, you had talked about something with I'm gonna say Bachman Turner Overdrive and Randy Bachman, but I was thinking, no, maybe that's not what it'd be. But do you have another story that's like that creation of a song, like the wreck? Because I
I'm
don't want
sure
to put words in your mouth, but it's just like, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but like I just always found it so fascinating how you put some of these things together and your stories, like you just said about being in the orchestra. I still don't have any paper, and you still can play. You still put it all together.
you have to learn to fake. Man, I had to fake a lot. And examples of records like the wreck, there isn't another example like the
I'll
wreck.
bet.
I know what you're saying. The better examples are the ones where you didn't create, it's where you just had to perform. And I
Ah,
think, like the theme from SWAT, for instance, I played on the theme from SWAT,
you did.
and I had to read my butt off playing that because it was written note for note. And now you don't, and I even made a mistake in the bridge. I can still hear where I got the kick drum pattern a little bit wrong, but there, that was an example of, there's strings and horns, the best musicians in the country. Here's your part, note for note. Ready? One, two,
Ah.
go. So there were more examples of that where you were on under the gun, where it was perform or not, or not. So there were more theme from SWATs than there was Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgeralds.
Well, to me, it's amazing. Like now, you've got another song for me to go back and listen to, right? Like with the theme from SWAT. And last week, or I think it was the week before when I was talking to you, I went back to Rock Me Gently with what we started with Andy Kim, and it's just like so many things have been part of, I'll say, your musical background, and you're still being requested, like you were saying, you're working on another project via like digitally, I think, right, or even right now.
Yes, a singer-songwriter from Germany, which I had turned it down. They said, do you have your own studio? Can you do it remotely? And I said, no and no. So I turned it down. And then they said, well, can you book another studio? And I said, this is going to be quite costly to have just the drummer go into a big deal studio. I said, that's okay. So I wrote the drum parts, booked the studio, and
Oh,
they
wow.
they sent the bill to Germany. Everything apparently is fine. So um, yeah, it was quite a different experience. I'm used to having everybody in or a lot of guys in the same room with you, and you can kind of say, hey, I like what you're doing, or I'm going to hit that push with you, or just that whole working together,
Right.
making music kind of thing. Well, I went in all by myself with a set of drums and a drum chart and played. So that, and I think there'll be more. I think there's more to finish on that CD. But the guitar player is in L.A., the bass player is in New York, the keyboard player is in Newfoundland. I'm in
Oh,
Toronto, and the artist is in Germany. So weird.
wow. So when you mentioned earlier on about the whole is greater than the sum of the parts, because I love that saying, right? And you're saying about most of your experience has been with the group, like with the band around.
Mhm.
This is very different, but it's very real, and I think it's happening a lot more today than ever. Um, how do I say it? Like you said, there'll probably be a lot more of it. Have you heard the results yet?
From the remote project?
Yeah.
No, I haven't. They were about to add a cello part,
Oh, wow.
and no, I haven't heard the guitar, bass, and I put the drums down before. There was only a guide track, vocal and rhythm guitar that I
That's what you
picked.
played to.
Yes. So no, I have not heard the bass part or the lead guitar part. So I'm I'm
Interesting.
anxious to hear them.
Oh, I bet you are, right? Like
Yeah.
that. I think that'd be kind of a really neat thing to kind of because I've heard other. I think in the last I mentioned about reading Steve Lukather's book from
Okay.
Toto,
Hmm.
and how like his experience in the book is very similar to how you kind of had just explained about having the drum part in the chart, and you've got like literally 15 minutes to figure out what you're going to play, and that's it.
Or
And
less.
he and oh yes, and he felt it was kind of that spontaneity is kind of he missed it, because he would talk about like this tracks for Michael Jackson's "Beat It" and things that like are kind of iconic signature things that he had done. And when you describe this, is it sounds so similar to it that like now I really want to go back and listen to the SWAT theme, the SWAT. Like it's like how those things are like come together and play into that side. But no, I was gonna say it's been such a fun time kind of going back through so many of these things and these iconic things, because as soon as you mentioned um uh, Andy Kim, I always think for some reason or other of Terry Jacks.
Yep.
And that like Seasons in the Sun was one of those another iconic songs. And that time has all been part of your world. Like
Well, I have some great memories of some of those Canadian sessions that I was talking about. Like I played on all of Charity Brown's hits. You Beat Me to the Punch and
oh
um, Rock Me, whatever that thing was called. I played on all of Charity Brown's, and they were all four songs in 3 hour kind of.
oh man.
Yeah, and Ain't No Way to Treat a Lady. There were some really good records that,
Oh
see, Ain't No Way to Treat a Lady. There was an arranger producer up from Motown named Tom Baird. He was the producer on Rare Earth. He wrote charts and produced Stevie Wonder, The Temptations.
oh oh
So Tom Baird came to Toronto, and we did some Charity Brown stuff, Copper Penny, we did together. And some of those records I hear on the radio still, and some of those are pretty darn good. And
oh
those
man.
were those were okay. You got 40 minutes, okay. Next, next song, next song. But to work with somebody like Tom Baird, the late great Tom Baird, with all of his Motown experience and all that
Oh
kind of stuff. And I got to do an album with the Funk Brothers, where the entire Funk
oh
Brothers
wow.
from Motown was hired, and I was the percussion player with the entire Funk Brothers rhythm section one time. And to talk to those guys, like they did Stevie Wonder and the Temps
Oh
and
yeah.
Supremes, and to talk to them, like you talk to them, and I said, so you played on a lot of Stevie's hits. I think so. What do you mean you think so? Well, they would hire different guys to come in and play on the same song. And the ones that ended up being on the radio, we were never sure if that was us or not. It's like that's a whole different world right
Oh
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
But so like I mean, because that goes back to like the Wrecking Crew too, right?
Yes.
And so many of the things that like, because that would have been even a big part of your world at that time, of like how they bring those players in, and they would like I can remember learning about the Beach Boys and being so, and that's not even that long ago, that they didn't play on Pet Sounds or something like that. It was like, you what?
Yeah. Well, the Wrecking Crew was a different thing. See, they would know what they played on, right?
Yes,
Because they would be hired and they would play on the Pet Sounds album or they would play on the Monkees album or something. But the Funk Brothers, they you
they
know
didn't know.
they weren't for sure. They didn't You could kind of tell your style of playing and saying, yeah, I think that's me on that, or I'm not sure, that sounds like Pistol Pete playing on that, not me, kind of thing. So that was a whole different thing that went on in Motown.
No, it is kind of crazy, and so would I say successful. Like what a sound that they created.
Oh yeah. Oh
Like
yeah.
because I remember even like when chatting with Peter Cardinelli, like we were saying about the bass player, he said he was enormously influenced by James Jamerson, and he didn't even know it. It's
Right.
exactly your point, right? Like there's no credit for that, right? Like
Well, and
interesting.
how fortunate people like Peter and myself at our age, we were listening to the pioneers,
Oh,
people who were inventing this stuff. Because back then, there weren't a lot of rules. And if there were rules, a lot of rules were being broken.
yep.
And you can hear somebody like Ringo Starr, who was so dotted eighth note swing oriented. Swing as, as a rhythm as opposed to,
Uh,
and you can hear the swing influence in the first Beatle albums, and then he transitions through the rest of them because studio guys were starting to play more straight eighth notes and not the dotted notes. And you can hear the early records, the Fats Domino records and the Chuck Berry records, and you can hear the evolution, that how music changed. But Peter talking about Jamie Jamerson, like he was a pioneer inventing the way things were played.
crazy.
And now people are copying what they
Yes.
heard. There isn't quite so much creating for pop records and R&B records and stuff. We were part of, we were
Oh, yeah.
sort of part of that, not maybe the first wave, but the second wave of that kind of thing.
Who would you say influenced what you played, or did you have influences?
Oh, big time. And people I didn't even know their names, and I'll probably
Ah,
forget some of them, but Jerry Allison with Buddy Holly, for instance.
oh, okay.
Okay, we were playing the Lightfoot band, or Gord's band, playing with Gord in Lubbock, Texas, and the promoter had an inn at Norman Petty Studios in Clovis, New Mexico. And he said to us guys, "Would you like to go see the studio?" But we'd have to go at like 6 a.m. I said, "I'm in," and Rick, "I'm in." So we went, and the preacher lived next door. Norm Petty was gone by this time, but the preacher had a key for the studio, and he gave us a private tour of
Oh,
the
wow.
Norman Petty studios. I swear to God, he had a couple of stories. We were in the control room, Doug, I swear. And I looked, there was a, I want to say it was a Polaroid picture. Rick questions me on that, but it was an old photograph of a young lady in a prom dress. And I'm thinking, no, there's no way. And I asked the preacher, I said, "Who's that?" I said, "That's Peggy Sue."
Oh, no
Jerry
way.
Allison, the drummer's girlfriend, and that was the picture that was taken at the prom, and now it's Peggy Sue. So it's like, are you kidding? Anyway,
Oh
we
my
went
goodness.
through the reception area, and this will kind of relate to the Old Dan's Records album story I told the first time.
Right.
Jerry Allison was sitting waiting to go in to record with Buddy Holly, and he was sitting in the reception area, and he was playing on his leg, right? And Norm Petty went by and said, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm practicing my snare part." And he said, "You're going to play that on the snare?" Jerry Allison said, "Yeah." He said, "No, you're not. You're going to play it on your leg." And that's what you hear on the song "Every Day." Every day. That's
Oh, wow.
so every once in a while you're part of rock and roll history. You find out these little things, right?
That's such a neat little story, man. It's a little story that's gigantic, if you know what I mean.
Yes. And how
Like
many of us have ended up copying, finding that it's okay. It's okay to play the rhythm, to
on
get
your leg.
because Jerry Allison did it. Norm Petty thought it was great.
It's so weird how some of those things go on. Like that's why I said, like nothing is what it seems. It's staggering to me of how many of these things are kind of like that. No, you're not. You're gonna play it on your leg. What?
Yep.
It
Yep.
becomes iconic in a sound.
Yep.
Wow. Well, I was gonna say I probably should start looking at landing this thing here, Barry, because I've taken a bunch of your time. And but to wrap up, anything that we haven't kind of gone through that you'd like to kind of add or say, what maybe to a young musician or someone out there about music today who's listening to music? Any final words like that?
Oh, probably it's going to sound corny, but I think the way to become successful and to stay successful is to be yourself.
Ah,
That if you try to be somebody else, you might have a little bit of short term success, but it's not going to last. And the way people will notice you is if you're a little bit different from the rest. If you're just another one like the others around you, you might have some success for a while, but the way to have sustained success is to be yourself. Play, if it's music, play what you feel, play what you think is right. And if you're going to have a career, people are going to recognize that and like what you present. And maybe it isn't going to be your career, but you're going to find out if you're true to yourself, be yourself. So it may sound corny, but it's kind of what I've lived by.
I don't think it's a corny thing. I think it's like I'm talking to a person who's actually demonstrated that. I think we need to echo that so much in many ways, Barry, because I think it's more than ever. It's so hard to actually seem to do that because there's so much around us, right? We carry it around in our phones. Be like this, and you said it earlier on about us just trying to fit in.
Still,
It still isn't just the perfect word for this conversation today. Barry, it's such a privilege for me to get to chat with you. There's so many memories that comes back when I'm talking to you in my life from the music side and even the sports side today with your baseball. And it's kind of neat to talk to a music person or a person just in general who has, how else do you say it? You've been yourself. Like, and what came to you just because you've been yourself. I think that's a very cool thing.
well, thank you. Thank you,
Well,
Doug.
with that, I think we're probably going to wrap up here. Barry, it's been wonderful to get to know you a little bit better. I'm looking forward to 2026 so I can actually shake your hand and meet you in person. And we'll see how that. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Better Than Not. I hope you've enjoyed this second conversation with Barry Keane, and the stories that he is relating to us today have been nothing more to me than thrilling, but just telling us that whole idea of being yourself. With that, we'll say goodbye. Thanks, Barry. Stay on for a minute if you could. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug.
Are we on? Good. Welcome to the Better Than Not podcast. Sometimes we get it right, sometimes we don't. But when we at least do something, we know it's almost always better than not.